This morning, President Biden is set to announce two major immigration programs. One to protect nearly 500,000 spouses of U.S. citizens from deportation, and another to make it easier for some migrants, including so-called dreamers, to get work visas. That's according to a source familiar with the discussions. The first new policy would apply to undocumented immigrants who have been married to U.S. citizens and have been living in the U.S. for more than 10 years, allowing them to apply for legal permanent residence without leaving the country. Some children would also be protected.
Essentially, this new policy that would be aimed at keeping families together. So a U.S. citizen who's married to an undocumented spouse wouldn't have to be apart from their spouse for a long period of time just to get this legal status.
Last year, encounters with undocumented immigrants at the US southern border reached a record-breaking 2.48 million. The United States is known for its freedom and courage and is celebrated for apple pie, baseball, and above all, the American dream. However, this dream is increasingly becoming a nightmare due to a significant immigration challenge. With immigrants comprising nearly 15% of the total population, there is mounting worry that the current demographic balance could undergo a drastic shift. This is why America is signaling a no-vacancy stance on immigration, aiming to prevent a nationwide identity crisis. What has pushed America to the edge? Immigration has emerged as the most pressing issue facing the US, surpassing concerns about the government, the economy, and inflation. This is the first time since 2019 that immigration has topped the list, driven by a record number of border crossings and the strain on social services in US cities. Annually, hundreds of thousands of individuals intentionally violate the nation's laws by unlawfully crossing US borders. Currently, it's estimated that 17 million undocumented immigrants are living in the United States. In September alone, there were 269,735 encounters along the southern border, the highest number ever recorded in a single month. Illegal immigration places a significant burden on public funds and stretches public services like education, healthcare, and housing. Communities face challenges such as overcrowded classrooms and scarce affordable housing, which intensify pressure on valuable natural resources. Order remain unresolved. In 2024, Senate Republicans blocked a bipartisan plan aimed at curbing the record-breaking influx of illegal border crossings. This is the most recent obstacle in a long-standing issue, as the US immigration system has been dysfunctional for decades. The last major overhaul took place in 1986, and since then, presidents and Congress have struggled to enact effective reforms. In 2024, there has been a marked rise in illegal immigration from India, China, Africa, and the Middle East crossing the US border. Specifically, there has been a significant increase in Chinese nationals, with more than 24,000 apprehended at the southwest border in the first half of fiscal year 2024, a sharp contrast to previous years. Additionally, nearly 97,000 Indian nationals were apprehended trying to cross the border illegally between October 2022 and September 2023. Last year, the government allocated $22.4 billion to immigration and border security. Adjusted for inflation, this represents the third highest spending level since at least 1980. What is behind America's stringent new immigration policies?
Along the road, migrants walk near the steel fence that marks the border between the United States and Mexico at Sasabe, Arizona. They've already walked 9 miles into the U.S. to get to this camp in Sasabe. Here, they wait to turn themselves in to U.S. Border Patrol officers. Most say they will ask the United States government for asylum.
In my country in Africa, things are not going well. That is why I decided to come to the United States.
The migrants describe their journey to the U.S. as dangerous.
I was afraid for my safety since in the forest in Panama it was not easy. We were walking in a big forest. It wasn't easy, but we made it.
U.S. officials released encounter data showing that illegal crosses into the United States from Mexico fell more than 6% in April, defying the usual spring increase. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says it encountered nearly 129,000 migrants between ports of entry along the southwest border. That's down from about 137,000 in March and nearly half of December's 250,000. The U.S. government has largely attributed the decline in encounters to more enforcement in Mexico. Migrants are still coming from different parts of the world.
There's a lot of migration that we're seeing from West Africa. So these generally are languages and cultures that we're not familiar with, languages and cultures that the other migrants are not familiar with. So that's always going to be a bit of a challenge.
But even with the lower figures, CBP officials say smugglers push migrants to the most isolated areas, like this one in the Tucson sector in Arizona.
We have to get out to these very remote areas that don't have necessarily paved roads to get to. So we are getting out there best we can to get to them, triage them, determine if there's someone that's more vulnerable than the rest, and then get those populations out of there.
Since May 2023, U.S. immigration officials deported more than 720,000 individuals. The majority had illegally crossed the southwest border. At the camp in Sasabe, humanitarian workers provide migrants with food and water.
It used to be it was Mexico and Central America, and those people still come. But there are people from various countries in Africa, met people from Bangladesh, from India, from, I don't know, it's kind of a United Nations sort of a thing.
The decrease in encounters hasn't slowed down the Republican criticism of how the Biden administration is handling immigration issues.
If people think they can come illegally, they will come.
U.S. officials say they will remain vigilant to understand the shifting migration patterns. Alini Barrows, VOA News, Washington.
A record 55% of American adults now see illegal immigration as a significant threat to national security. This heightened worry is mirrored in Congress's disapproval ratings, especially in its management of immigration and foreign aid. President Biden's approach to immigration plays a pivotal role in his poor approval ratings, with just 28% of Americans supporting his immigration policies. Well-publicized incidents of violent crimes committed by undocumented immigrants receive widespread media attention, heightening public unease. Illegal immigrants are disproportionately represented in federal prisons compared to their population share, strengthening perceptions of insecurity.
The banner says Exodus from poverty. This column of humanity heading north from the countries of Central and South America and well beyond too. North to the United States, because they think the opportunity, the hope, is there.
We are looking to improve ourselves, to have a better quality of life, because in our country, the situation is getting worse and worse, and we are only looking for an opportunity. What we are looking for is to work. We are not criminals. We are not bad people.
There is nothing new about all this. The number of people crossing illegally into America this past year has been staggering. 10,000 a day last week, and nearly 250,000 encountered by the US border officials in November. It has been a record-breaking year, and objectively, it seems clear that the US government has lost any sense of control. It's why the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Mexico late this holiday week. President Biden sent him to find a deal to fix the problem, because he knows that the border issue may well cost him the White House. There was, we're told, some progress, and it is familiar stuff, tackling the smugglers, repatriating people, more money. None of it, though, has worked before. And so while the politicians spoke of solutions along the border fence, the people continue to gather. This is a part of the US southern border where former President Trump's wall has been built. But as Sky News has seen this past year, the controversial fence doesn't stretch the length of the border, not nearly. And so, of course, those who are pushed from poverty and pulled to hope will continue to come and pass. Remember, Donald Trump is the Republican Party's frontrunner for president this coming year, and so images like these are a gift for him. This is the tarmac in the northeastern US city of Philadelphia, and it is a neat hint of America's complex migrant puzzle. The plane is full of those seeking a new life, chartered to shift them away from Texas to become another state's problem. And in New York, further north, a familiar sight. Buses arriving from Texas as they have been almost daily all year. A 36-hour drive. 14 of these arrived in one night this week. 7,200 people into the city in just 2 weeks. All of it a record. It is, of course, an age-old challenge about fears and hopes, pushing and pulling. But here, now, it is impacting the direction of a US election which could reshape the world.
Additionally, criminal gangs primarily consisting of individuals with a migrant background control approximately 60% of the country, participating in illegal activities such as drug trafficking and fraud. Mexican immigrants constituted 23% of the US immigrant population in 2022, down from 29% in 2010. The next largest immigrant groups were from India and China, including Hong Kong and Macau, but excluding Taiwan, with approximately 2.8 million individuals from India and 2.5 million from China. These groups represented 6% and 5% of all immigrants respectively. Other significant countries of origin included the Philippines, 4%, El Salvador, Vietnam, Cuba and the Dominican Republic, each 3%, and Guatemala and Korea, each 2%. Leading up to the midterm elections, Republicans had planned to introduce policies akin to those of the Trump administration aimed at curbing illegal immigration. Although many of these efforts were largely symbolic, the GOP intends to hold the Biden administration accountable for its immigration policies, with potential investigations into Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and the prospect of launching an impeachment inquiry. Given the split in Congress, achieving comprehensive immigration reform appears unlikely. The United States boasts the largest number of foreign-born residents globally, with immigrants making up nearly 15% of the population in 2024. Despite this significant demographic presence, Congress has struggled to address immigration challenges comprehensively. While 70% of Americans view legal immigration favorably, a majority consider illegal immigration a national security concern. Major attempts by lawmakers to reform immigration have fallen short, resulting in increased reliance on the executive and judicial branches. President Biden has moved to reverse policies from the Trump era, sparking a significant rise in border apprehensions and legal disputes over programs like DACA and Remain in Mexico. Biden's efforts to expand immigration are aimed at tackling labor shortages and a declining birth rate, with a focus on prioritizing skilled immigrants. This includes introducing new initiatives to admit 30,000 migrants monthly from countries such as Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, alongside stricter measures to deter illegal border crossings. Immigration has emerged as the most divisive issue in American politics, highlighting a stark contrast between Republicans, 48%, and Democrats, 8%, who view it as the top concern. This ongoing emphasis on immigration underscores broader worries about national security and the economic impact of undocumented migrants. President Biden's handling of immigration has received negative reviews, contributing to his overall low approval ratings. As the 2024 presidential election looms, immigration remains a pivotal and contentious topic for both political parties. Former President Donald Trump, the Republican candidate for president, has consistently voiced opposition to immigration. There is speculation that Trump may garner more support than Biden in the upcoming election.
Tonight, major U.S. cities running out of ways to house a constant flow of migrants.
I want to ask people, where do we go? Where do the families go?
In Seattle, asylum seekers now sleeping in tents in this encampment after King County ran out of money to house them at a local motel.
Incluso ahorita mismo nosotros no sabemos cuánto tiempo tenemos que acampar y si se extiende.
Adriana Mendina and her young children among more than 100 people who were forced to pack their things. She says the encampment will just be the latest temporary housing her family will move into since they arrived from Venezuela.
Mis hijos y todos los niños de la comunidad están padeciendo mucho de esta situación, porque lastimosamente no pueden ir a su escuela.
Washington State has upped the budget to help migrants to $32 million, but that money won't be available until July. So right now, cities like Seattle are left to cover the costs.
I want folks to know that there's a crisis here.
And that's a problem seen coast to coast. Many states and cities placing limits on how long migrants can stay in emergency shelters. This week, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey signing into law a 9-month cap on migrant shelter stays, while also freeing up $426 million to aid in the ongoing crisis in the state.
We will change the structure of our current shelter system.
Denver, where officials say the migrant crisis has cost the city up to $70 million, will limit any new arrivals to a 72-hour stay at city shelters. For the roughly 1,000 individuals already in the shelter system, they'll get placed in an apartment for 6 months and receive additional assistance.
No tenemos un hogar, no tenemos la ayuda, de verdad no tenemos la capacidad de sostenernos porque no tenemos trabajo, pues, ¿me entiende?
In New York City, after months of back and forth between city officials and advocates, there's now a 30-day limit on shelter stays for most migrants.
From day one, we said that we did not want people on the street.
But with policies repeatedly changing, many migrants could face a new reality of life under a nylon roof as summer temperatures roll in.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now in studio. And Stephen, the deadlines to move some of these migrants out of the shelters, they're coming up, and some of them are within 72 hours?
Yeah, and it's really hard to keep track of this, quite frankly. Tom, we've been trying today just to put all this together, but they just keep changing. Now, some places do have more exceptions, like Massachusetts, for example. If students are in public schools, if there are health conditions, people can reapply to get longer time. Some places allow you to reapply after eviction, but just trying to imagine a migrant trying to navigate all these things. It was difficult for our team to do that today.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
There's a notable divergence in the political beliefs of Biden and Trump supporters regarding significant cultural issues such as immigration. 63% of Trump backers favor the deportation of all undocumented immigrants, whereas only 11% of Biden supporters share this view. Efforts to reduce illegal immigration encompass deterrence, apprehension, and deportation. Deterrence includes fully funding border enforcement, ending catch and release policies, and removing welfare incentives. Apprehension focuses on detaining and expelling undocumented aliens, requiring congressional action. Removal policies involve legislation like H.R. 2, Secure the Border Act of 2023, which mandates restarting border wall construction and other measures, and H.R. 4238, Kate's Law, which imposes stricter penalties on repeat offenders. Other bills address various aspects of immigration control, aiming to secure borders and safeguard public safety. Why is there such heightened concern among Americans about immigration now? There has been a notable shift in American attitudes towards immigration. While 57% of US adults still view openness to immigrants as crucial to national identity, this marks a decrease from 66% in July 2021. Concerns about the potential loss of national identity due to excessive openness to immigrants have risen, especially among Republicans, 72%. The collapse of a $118.3 billion immigration deal in Congress has amplified frustrations. This proposal included bolstered border security, aid for refugees, and substantial reforms to the asylum system. Voters are split on which party handles immigration better, with 41% favoring Republicans and 29% favoring Democrats. A significant portion of Americans disapprove of how the government is managing immigration at the US-Mexico border, with 73% expressing dissatisfaction and only 23% believing the government is performing well. Among Republicans, 70% view illegal immigration as a major issue, whereas among Democrats, this figure stands at just 25%. This partisan divide is underscored by Republicans generally advocating for stricter immigration controls, while Democrats lean towards supporting more relaxed restrictions.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an al-Qaeda person come in his administration, killed three American soldiers, killed 3 American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
Many point to economic concerns, worrying that an influx of immigrants could strain public resources, depress wages in certain industries, and heighten job competition. These worries reflect broader anxieties about economic stability and ensuring fair opportunities for both citizens and newcomers. The government's response has been deemed inadequate, prompting questions about what concerned citizens can do to affect change in their communities and uphold American values. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.